Hey you! I'm so glad you're here today. I'm Jenny Prochko from Owls Indigo, and I make videos about spirituality, goal setting, journaling, mental health and awareness, and my story. Today I have a very special paint with me. This is a paint with me that is specifically for your bullet journal. I like to use watercolors in my bullet journal, and sometimes they bleed through the pages and into the spine of my bullet journal, and I have a hack for that for you. So make sure you keep watching the video today so you can get that little tip so your bullet journal watercolor paintings look beautiful too. Let's get into today's pink Black-Eyed Susan watercolor paint with me for your bullet journal. First, I'm starting by creating the petals of my first pink Black-Eyed Susan. I wanted to give you an overview of what it looks like when I create this. The key to creating this watercolor painting in your bullet journal is to continuously rotate your bullet journal when you're painting. And now I want to dive in closer up so you can see what the actual stroke looks like. So you want to do quick up and down strokes for each petal, just a quick back and forth, and put a little bit of curve on it. I create these watercolor paintings specifically for my bullet journal, and that means that I'm actually going to be painting into the spine sometimes. And the number one tip that I can give you for creating watercolor paintings in your bullet journal is to have a dry paintbrush handy so you can pull some of that watercolor out of the spine so it doesn't bleed through to the other pages. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just taking a dry paintbrush and soaking up some of that excess watercolor that has pooled down into the spine so it doesn't soak through to the other pages. And remember, rotate your journal or rotate whatever you're painting on. Do quick up and down strokes and keep that dry paintbrush handy so you can mop up the color that gets into the spine so it doesn't seep through to the other pages, and dry it off each time. I like to sketch out the general shape of my flowers each month. I've done that in pencil and then I erase them so I can only just barely see it on the pages. There's that quick up and down stroke again, and then remember, rotate your bullet journal. This is what's going to give the flowers the shape. And now after this first flower has dried a bit, I'm going back in to create some more petals with that quick up and down stroke to give a little more dimension to the pink Black-Eyed Susan. And now I'm doing quick little dabbing strokes with my paintbrush to create the flower buds that haven't opened yet. And if you have a really saturated bud with a lot of watercolor paint on it, go back in and pull that paint in the direction that you want to. Literally pull it and move it with your paintbrush. Now I'm creating the little greenery bits that are coming off of the bud at the base of the bud, and I'm using a more saturated green color for this. And I'm not using a different color, I'm just using a more saturated version of the same green that I used to create those buds. Now I'm taking just water on my brush and blending out these buds a little bit so those quick strokes that we use to create the bud don't look as harsh. And I'm doing that by just using water. Next, we're basically going to do the exact same thing for the interior of the flower once it's opened up. I'm taking a brown color and doing quick little strokes as well. Not quite a dot, but a little more of a stroke to it. And remember, if you're painting in the spine, keep that dry paintbrush handy so you can mop up any extra watercolor so it doesn't bleed through the pages. And here I'm going in with a little bit of water and blending out those little brown strokes that I made for the interior of the flower. Now I'm creating some dimension for the flower buds that haven't opened yet by adding a little bit of brown to the base of those green flower buds. Doing that with the brown, little quick strokes, and then I'll use some water to blend that up into the rest of the green flower bud, which you can see here. And then after I do that, I go back in and add a little bit more saturated brown color to the base of each bud to give it a little bit more of a 3D effect. Now it's time to create the stems. When you're doing botanical stems in your bullet journal, or just on any watercolor painting really, it helps to have a really thin paintbrush. But I decided to just use 2 paintbrushes today, and I really like the thickness of this one because it seems like the pink black-eyed Susans actually have a bit of a thicker stem anyway in real life. And now I'm moving on to the petal. I had it sketched out, so I knew kind of the shape that I wanted, and I'm just filling it in. For each of the petals that I create, I'm doing 1 layer of the petal and then moving on to the next one. I'll come back in later and add a little bit more depth and saturation with a slightly darker green once those original petals have dried a bit. Now I'm just filling in some petals where I think that they need to be and some stems where they need to be. And here is a close-up of a petal that I did that is really saturated. I have a lot of pigment on my brush and a lot of water on my brush. So that meant that the petal was going to be darker, but it also meant that there was going to be excess water in the spine. So I had my dry paintbrush again, and I mopped up that color and then dried it off again on a rag that I had sitting off to the side. That way the colors didn't bleed through. And as you can see, I'm getting a lot more dimension in my leaves as I add more layers to it. And you just want to build a little bit at a time. With watercolor, you can't do it all at once. You have to do layers to each element that you're working with. I hope that you enjoyed today's paint with me. If you want to see last month's paint with me, I'll leave that linked up above and down below. You can also see how I use this pink black-eyed Susan watercolor in my bullet journal for my August plan with me, which I'll link up above and down below too. Make sure you sign up for my private monthly spirituality journaling prompt that goes out on the 1st of every month. That's going to be coming up really soon. You'll receive a private email from me, the secret spirituality journaling prompt, a private video explanation from me, and a peek into my journal for a look at my private journal entry to the exact same question. Sign up now before the 1st. The link is in the description. I'm so grateful that you chose to spend your time with me today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!